I want to thank everyone who took their time out of the day to attend this webinar. I really appreciate it. In a minute, Eric is going to go ahead and talk about the Exotic Aquatic Plant Watch. He is a water resource educator with Michigan State University Extension. If anyone has any questions, like I said, please put them in the chat box and keep your screens muted. That way we can minimize any interruptions. And then please stick around because at the end, I'm gonna have you guys do a poll and we can announce the winner of the free lake vegetation survey. So then without any further ado, I will turn it over to Eric to get us started.
Excellent, a free aquatic plant survey on your lake. That's great. Thank you, Emma, for introducing me. Like she said, my name is Eric Elgin. I'm an aquatic ecologist and water resources educator with MSU Extension. Within that role, I'm also the coordinator for the Cooperative Lakes Monitoring Program. And inside of the Cooperative Lakes Monitoring Program is the Exotic Aquatic Plant Watch. So there's a lot of names there, but hopefully I'll do some clarification on that. And then after that, I'm just going to motivate the importance of the early detection of aquatic plants, of aquatic invasive plants in lakes. So we'll get started. So I know we're not live or anything, but does, always my question when I start, does anyone know what this plant is here? Feel free to put that in the chat if you want. Does anyone know what this plant is? I'll look at it at the end. Well, so the Cooperative Lakes Monitoring Program, which houses the Exotic Aquatic Plant Watch, that's the early detection program that we have here in Michigan, began in 1974. It's been around for quite a few years, 47 years, I think that is. And we've had almost 1,000 lakes involved with this program through time. And what it is a cost-effective framework for long-term baseline data. And so we have a variety of parameters that we train volunteers around the state to collect. And that data, the hope is that it first of all gives us a better understanding of our lake. And that's just a plus in general, because it's interesting and fun. But then also it helps us to understand what to do. Is our lake in good condition and we protect it, or is it looking like it's trending not so well and we need to intervene and conduct some management? So it gives the data necessary to make a wise management decision. And what's great about this too is if there's lakefront owners on this presentation, is that oftentimes data gets collected on a lake intermittently from different people, different companies, different efforts. And that data often gets just put on a piece of paper and then might go into somebody's desk or it goes into somebody's email inbox. But what's nice about this program, the Cooperative Lakes Monitoring Program, is that the data is all public and we have it all easily available on our website at mycorp.net, MICORPS.net. So all the data that's ever been collected on the lake is stored there so it doesn't get lost or buried on somebody's desk. So that's a great reason to be a part of the Cooperative Lakes Monitoring Program. So the parameters are wide-reaching, from water clarity to nutrients like phosphorus or chlorophyll A, which is a proxy measurement for algae. We also, if there's people interested in fishing, dissolved oxygen temperature is a great one to understand the fishery of a lake better, as well as some of the other chemical processes that happen in a lake. And then we have aquatic plants and aquatic invasive plants. So the drawing that Emma mentioned is for an aquatic plant, so surveying all of them within your lake, the entire plant community. But the one that we're interested in today is the aquatic invasive plants. But before I move on, shoreline surveys is also important. The condition of a lake shoreline really impacts the health of a lake. But aquatic invasive species, that parameter, that program within the CLMP is called the Exotic Aquatic Plant Watch. This is a program where we train individuals to follow a specific type of protocol or monitoring protocol, and that is an early detection protocol. So the Exotic Aquatic Plant Watch's goal is to get you out in pivotal locations within a lake to find a plant, an invasive plant, before it becomes an issue in your lake. And I'll talk about that in a little bit, but in short is, if a lake becomes fully abundant, or sorry, if a invasive plant becomes fully abundant in a lake, it's very difficult to control. And by difficult means it's impossible usually to eradicate. And it also becomes very, very costly. It costs a lot to manage it year in, year out, because it doesn't go away. So the goal of the Plant Watch is to train individuals with identification skills and the protocol to focus in on areas of a lake where an invasion can occur, or most likely to occur. So not just to talk negatively about aquatic plants, but the native aquatic plants are spectacular. They're really important to lakes. So there's sometimes a reaction of ew, weeds, but aquatic plants are very diverse, and they do a lot of different things for lakes, from increasing water clarity, valuable habitat for fish and other critters that live in our lakes. And then also they buffer our shorelines from the wave energy that would be eroding them. But of course, when invasive aquatic plants come into a lake, they can cause a tremendous amount of issues. As you can see in this, the biggest issue is always associated typically with the large growth of biomass that can occur. So when there's a large biomass that explodes over the years from aquatic invasive plants, we see a reduction in diversity in a whole bunch of different organisms. It could be a reduction in the native plants that are really good for a lake, or it can be a reduction in the waterfowl, because as you can see, for example, this is a very thick mat. This is called European frogbit. This is one of the plants you'll be looking for if you join in the Exotic Aquatic Plant Watch. But when this invades a site, this is free floating and creates this intermingled mat that's very difficult for a lot of different organisms to deal with, including us. This is a hard situation to boat in, so our recreation is impacted. Our fisheries are impacted. There have been multiple studies where usually they've looked at Eurasian water milfoil, a common aquatic invasive plant here in Michigan. They have seen a reduction in property values in lakes with when in a lake that has been invaded by Eurasian water milfoil. And let's say, so another negative of this is, so let's say you actually, one of the species becomes or established in your lake. Eradication becomes almost impossible, if impossible. And now year after year, you will have to be spending some sort of control action, if that's what your lake association or lake board or lake group decides. And that can be costly. So for example, $200 to $2,000 per acre, depending on the type of management action you take, that you'll be doing in perpetuity if you decide to continue to reduce, to manage or control that invasive population. So what can we do? Well, we always talk about prevention. Prevention is the best thing we can do. If you don't have it in your lake, you want to try to prevent it from getting into your lake. And so there's lots of different programs out there trying to encourage people to use the best actions, and that's the clean, drain, dry. If you've seen that on billboards or in magazines and on the radio, there's different programs: Clean Boats, Clean Waters, Stop Aquatic Hitchhikers. We also have one if you're an aquarium lover. Ripple helps reduce the spread of unwanted species into our water bodies. So there's lots of different things for prevention. But something that's key with prevention is that you also need to be on the lookout. And so that's where early detection comes in. So here's kind of a complicated figure, but I'll walk you through it to kind of have an understanding. So this is referring to the time of an invasion. This is called an invasion curve. So early on in before a lake is invaded, the species, that particular invasive species is absent. So that's what we see here. The area occupied within a lake by that invasive species, it's absent, so it's 0. When it's zero, we should be putting in a lot of effort into prevention. But we want to be looking, because what if something comes in? We don't want to find it too late. Because if we find it too late, what starts to happen is if we don't detect it and react to it, the invasive species starts to increase the area occupied within that lake. And at some point, it's covering a large chunk of that lake, of the available habitat. And now control becomes costly and difficult. And you start to get all the negative impacts. So if you are looking early on, you will hopefully find that invasive species before it gets too established, and then your response can be small, but really key in either eradicating it or at least keeping it to a very low population. And with the Exotic Aquatic Plant Watch, we see that this works. In 2018 alone, we did a survey of some of the lakes that were a part of the Exotic Aquatic Plant Watch in Oakland County. And we found that 10 of the lakes that were part discovered starry stonewort for the first time in their lakes. So starry stonewort, which is what you see in this person's hand, it has these little reproductive structures called bulbils. This is one of the plants you will be looking for in the Exotic Aquatic Plant Watch. It's become very common in southern Michigan, and now coming into mid-northern Michigan is becoming more and more common. But anyways, without this program, without this early detection program, these lakes, these 10 lakes, would not have found starry stonewort, and then could have probably become a problem in the next couple of years, where now they were able to have a respond in time to knock it back. So here are 3 of the species that you'll be looking at for the Exotic Aquatic Plant Watch. These are what are considered the established aquatic invasive plants in Michigan. So although there are many native aquatic plants in Michigan, there are not many established invasive species, invasive ones. So what I mean by established these are the 3 aquatic invasive species that have been found in Michigan for Eurasian milfoil and curlyleaf pondweed for over 100 years, and for starry stonewort for a couple decades. So they've been around, they're widespread, they're not everywhere, but widespread across the state. So that's what it means by established. So Eurasian milfoil, I'll do a quick little, I can't go past this slide without giving a quick little identification lesson. But see these are 4 leaves of Eurasian milfoil. One of the leaves looks kind of like either a kid's Christmas tree or a feather or maybe a fern. And so what you would do is you would count one side of this. So you count these, what are called leaflets. And if it's over 12 and you have a whorled leaf arrangement, you are looking at Eurasian water milfoil. For curlyleaf pondweed, the first indication is look at these nice lasagna noodles. The sides of them look like lasagna noodles. But if you look closer, this isn't a good image for that, you'll see little serrations. It'll look like a serrated knife. And this is the only pondweed that has that serrated knife edge. And of course, starry stonewort is that, what happens here, this is that little reproductive structure called a bulbil, and it looks like a star. No other plant in Michigan has that. And here are the other 2 species we have that the volunteers will be looking for. This one on the left is called Hydrilla. Hydrilla is what we consider like the devil plant, the plant that this is something that we hope will never be in Michigan, but we do know that there's established populations in Ohio. So it's close by, and so keeping vigilant. This is a major invasive species across the world. And we hope that we won't find it in here, but it'll take people like us who are looking to make sure of it. And then there's an emerging species. This is not in many lakes in the state, but European frogbit is becoming a concern. Just recently to this area that we're presenting for here in northern western Michigan, Pentwater Lake has an extensive invasion of European frogbit in the wetland just above it that drains into the lake. So this is a plant we are really concerned about because it's not in many lakes now. And if not found early, it takes up acres. So this is covering acres upon acres of a wetland just upstream of Pentwater. So I often hear this. So what if you already have a company who surveys plants in your lake? Because that's common. You might be already doing treatments for Eurasian milfoil, for example. And so you already have a company who comes out there. Well, the reason why that's maybe not seen as enough is that they're not out there doing early detection surveys. They're doing a specific survey called an AVAS survey, where they're doing a quick inventory of the plants that are there. But early detection surveys are a little different. It requires going to specific areas of your lake and being a little bit more intensive in areas where an invasion is likely to occur, for example, at a public boat ramp. And so you'll be throwing a lot more rake tosses in those areas than a company normally would. Also, the company's not out on your, you know your lake more than the company does. And you're out on it a lot more. So if you're trained to know what species you might have to look out for, you're more apt to find it before it becomes an issue, where the company will find it with their normal surveys, but maybe the year after it's expanded, for example. So a couple, if you're interested in this, there's a lot of different resources out there to help. This is a great book for beginners, not just for invasive plants, but also for the native plants. Through the Looking Glass, you can purchase this through University of Wisconsin Extension. This is another University of Wisconsin Extension publication, and this shows a whole bunch of plants, but it has really great pictures, including invasive species. And then here in Michigan, we also have this little booklet where it's for the watch list species. And I didn't cover what those were, but watch list species are species that really aren't established here and may not even been found here yet, like Hydrilla, but we know enough about the plant where we should be concerned of it coming to Michigan and spreading. So thank you very much. That was kind of a blitz through on why, trying to stay on top of and look for aquatic invasive plants before they become an issue is important. And I hope if there's any interest in the Exotic Aquatic Plant Watch, I'd be happy to answer any questions now, or feel free to email or call me.
Thank you, Eric. So like I said, you can go ahead and put your questions in the chat box. So one person asked about your opinion on ballistic water transportation as invasive species introduction.
Yeah. So yeah, ballast water.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Yeah, so I recently looked up the stats. So ballast water has historically in the Great Lakes region been one of the biggest reasons why they've been introduced to this part of the continent. So freighters from shipping freighters from other continents have gone up the St. Lawrence Seaway with water in their tanks, which allows them to regulate their buoyancy. And then when they get to the Great Lakes, they've just released it. That water doesn't just contain water, it has also contained other organisms. For example, the famous one being zebra mussels or zebra mussel veligers, their larval stage, which has spread them into the Great Lakes regions. For inland lakes, ballast water has typically not been necessarily the main driver for inland waters. However, there are newer boats out there, not necessarily new ones, but newish, called wake boats. And those are boats that actually that people use in inland water bodies that have ballast tanks. So how they work is that they will pull in water, which sinks them deeper into the lake, which displaces the water, which gives them bigger waves. So now there's a concern if these boats are pulling in water from, and then moving from lake to lake, and maybe not all the water gets drained out. There could be organisms that it could be moving around. So that's become a place for research that's been going on for inland lakes. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. There's another question. Someone wants to know where they can get Michigan Watch List aquatic booklets.
You can, I wonder if the best thing is you can email me, and then I'll give you the contact that you can get from Eagle. So Eagle was formerly the DEQ, the Department of Environmental Quality. They are now the Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy. So that's the acronym Eagle. And they are the ones who created this, and I can get you in touch with the person to get that.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions they want to throw in the chat box? Or if you'd like, we have a pretty small number if you want to just unmute yourself and ask a question.
Yeah, I'd be happy to have a little discussion. We're a small enough group.
Eric, do you have to be a lake property owner to participate in this program?
No, great question, Mary. Thanks. So you don't need to, like, so many, there are a lot of volunteers who it might be where they have gone fishing a lot and they just care for the lake, or it could be that they don't, they're a resident in town and they love nature and love collecting data and understanding it. So yes, you don't have to be a lake resident. I think you just need to have access to the lake. Now the protocol, the only other thing though, this is the limitation is also you do need some sort of watercraft because the protocol, it's not just at boat ramps, it's in other locations around the lake. And so you will need, a canoe, kayak, a boat. I suppose you could do it from a Sea-Doo. That'd be kind of interesting. If you do that, please take a picture for me so I can put it in my presentations. But yeah.
Thank you.
So we have someone commented that they're having trouble getting volunteers. Well, they want to know if you'll be able to present at their lake association meeting. I think that's maybe something that you guys could talk about later, but could you talk on like how to get volunteers to assist with this program?
Yeah. So yeah, I contact me and we'll see I give presentations to lake associations and lake boards throughout the state. So yeah, feel free to contact me and we'll see if the time makes sense. Yeah, so that's incredibly difficult. There's lots of depends, some lakes are full of the people who live around lakes. So we can focus on that. Mary mentioned a great point of you can go away from a lake to try to find people who care. And that's one way to increase getting volunteers is to potentially reach out to, you can be creative and reach out to a high school biology teacher and find out if there's any interest around, or if there's a conservation district, chatting with them to see if there's anyone who'd be interested in the community. So now that's outreach to the community to try to get volunteers. But now how about the most rich group of volunteers that could be there are the people who live on the lake, the riparians. If the riparians around a lake are part-time seasonal, that can be very difficult. So some lakes, people are there off and on just 2 weeks out of the year. So that can be hard to interact with them. What's nice with the Exotic Aquatic Plant Watch, we once had it required that you had to do SecuDisc and that you'd have to do SecuDisc throughout the entire season. But the Exotic Aquatic Plant Watch you can sign up for, and it's like a one-day thing. You can finish a survey easily within a part of a day, depending on the size of your lake, of course. But if it's a normal sized lake, it can all be done in one day. As for recruiting, it's hard. It's hard. I would have to say, try some neighbor to neighbor communications, having a coffee or a beer with somebody at the beginning or end of the day out on the pontoon boat and just saying how important the lake is and maybe describing kind of, like it's fun to understand your lake, and it's important to understand your lake when making decisions about it. So that's one way you can do that. And then the hope is that the communication between neighbor and neighbor will spur somebody's interest to help. Sorry for kind of a roundabout answer there.
Well, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? Like I said, you can put them in the chat box or just comment them yourself. If not, Eric, did you want to talk a little bit more about Plan ID, and maybe people will think of questions?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. If people want to stay on, I have a few slides that I can share about a little bit more about plant identification for these species. So yeah, I'll go ahead and do that. And again, the group is small enough, so if you feel free to interrupt either via chat, or you can actually just take yourself off of mute and ask me to clarify anything. Okay, so here are those established aquatic invasive species that I was talking about. So I mentioned a little bit about Eurasian milfoil, but here we can talk here's a little bit more of the tips. And a little review is always helpful. So here's kind of the look of Eurasian water milfoil when you see it in the water. Again, those feather-shaped leaves, kid's Christmas tree. There are native milfoils in Michigan, and they're quite common. And so the way you distinguish Eurasian milfoil from the other native milfoils is to look at the leaf arrangement and the number of leaflets. So first of all, leaf arrangement. I'll kind of give a little lesson on just plant ID in general. So leaf arrangement in this picture is referring to how the leaves are coming off of the stem. So this is a cross section of the stem right here. So we're looking right here. There are a few common leaf arrangements, and I'll show it with my hands. Usually I can do this like in person a little better, but I'll just do this now. So if my arm is the stem, and one leaf is coming off here and the next leaf is coming out here, this would be considered alternate leaf arrangement. If the leaf is coming out here and the other one is here, that's opposite leaf arrangement. And I can't do world, but world would be something like leaves are coming out all around a node. So this is considered world leaf arrangement. So, okay, so now back to Eurasian milfoil. If you pull a plant out of the water and it has these feather-like leaves, and now you see that it's whorled, as you can see here, now you want to look at one of the leaves. So this is a full leaf, and you're going to look at the leaflets. So that's these little guys coming out, the branches of the kid's Christmas tree, so say. And now you count them. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So you have 14 pairs is what this would be considered, because they're mostly paired up with the other side. So you have 14 pairs. So if you have a feather-like leaf, whorled leaf arrangement with 12 or more pairs of leaflets, you are holding on to Eurasian water milfoil. As you can see from this map down here, this has been found, like I mentioned, it's widespread within the region, but that doesn't mean it's everywhere. I hope people on this call visit or live on a lake that does not have it, but it wouldn't be uncommon if you did. Okay. Well, again, a small group. So if you're confident enough, feel free, please speak up or put it in the chat. Is this Eurasian water milfoil? Here's the quiz. Is this Eurasian milfoil in the upper left of the screen? Anyone?
No, it is not.
It is not. You're right. This is another what's called a finely divided leaf here. but this is called coontail or Ceratophyllum demersum. It looks like almost a peace sign or a wishbone, not the feather-like leaf. How about this one to our bottom left? So this is one leaf, by the way. The stem would be right where my pointer is. Is this Eurasian water milfoil?
No.
No.
People are commenting no.
Great. Love it. This is Utricularia. This is a bladderwort. This is actually a carnivorous plant that lives under the water. These little bladders open and close at like super speeds and will suck in a invertebrate and dissolve it and eat it. But as you can see here, this is one leaf. It kind of is feather-like maybe, but there's a lot more branching happening here. So this is the main stem with lots of branching. And now the final one is this Eurasian water milfoil. I'll look at the chat here. So
Got one no and one yes.
So this is not Eurasian milfoil. So it's definitely that feather-like leaf. We also have whorled leaf arrangement, but we don't have 12 leaflets on one side. This is northern water milfoil, Myriophyllum sibiricum. And there's Eurasian. So the next common aquatic invasive plant is called curly-leaf pondweed. This is widespread, but not everywhere. And also what we see with this plant, sometimes it causes huge issues and it creates massive mats. But in some lakes, it's actually becomes part of the native plant community where managing them is not necessary because they don't have a negative impact. And instead, what we say for those situations is keep an eye on it every year. And if it starts to expand and starts to impact recreation, then maybe react. But if it's just a member of the community, it's usually not a problem. So how can you tell with this one? If you pull a plant out of the water and it has alternate leaf arrangement, so that's this, and they have ribbon-like leaves. So this is kind of the thickness of a typical ribbon. And then when you look at the side of that ribbon, it has the serrated leaf, like you see here. You can usually see this with your naked eye, but what you can do is grab that leaf and hold it up to the sky, not at the sun, but into the sky. So you have contrast and you'd be able to see the serrations. So this is curly leaf pondweed. Starry stonewort is a difficult plant to identify. Starry stonewort is not a plant at all. This is actually an algae. It's a big algae, so we call it a macro algae. Here's a picture of it as like a singular plant, but you often will never see it like this. You often will see it in this. It creates a huge mass of mingled stems and branchlets, all mashed together. So it's very difficult to it's difficult to identify because it also looks like some of our natives called Cara or musk grass. Those are really beneficial plants to have in our lakes and super common. So unfortunately, this can evade detection because it has some similarities to our natives. But if you're suspecting of it, take a look at the parts of the plant that are near the sediment. And what you'll see is that those plants have, starry stonewort has root-like structures called rhizoids. So that doesn't matter, but those rhizoids are kind of long and they look like fishing line. If you see that, follow the fishing line to see if you can find one of these. So there's that bulbul, here's the rhizoid, this is that fishing line type structure. So it's thin and translucent, just like fishing line. But then you'll see this, and this is kind of, you can kind of tell the size of it by the person's finger. Easily seen, they're hard, so if you can crush it, but it'll be crunchy. So that's starry stonewort. If you see this, nothing else in Michigan has this structure.
Eric, you have a question.
Yeah.
Does grass smell like skunk when pulled?
Yeah, so musk grass also known as Cara, C-H-A-R-A, has a very pungent smell. Not all of the species, so there's a bunch of species of Cara out there, of muskgrass. But oftentimes I guess, is it skunky? I would describe it as like lake. Like, what does a lake smell like? It smells like muskgrass. It's like very pungent lake. So that's a helpful hint. Starry stonewort does not have that smell. But again, to complicate things a little bit more, there's another group of native plants called Nitella. I don't go into detail in the slides, but those plants are related to Cara and related to starry stonewort, and they don't have a smell. So smell it. The smell is helpful, but not definitive. Also, if you're pulling up starry stonewort and there's some sediment involved, that sediment can also be releasing kind of a sulfur type smell. So that can be, you know, not always the best character. Oh, I do have, so here, for example, is Cara, a little more crunchy, no star bulbils. And I mentioned the shorter branching. And what I mean by that is Cara typically has much smaller branchlets. So that's these, compared to starry stonewort, which can actually be quite robust of a plant. Interesting enough, starry stonewort, if you squeeze the stem, they're really large cells, and they'll pop and drain all the liquid out of them. So that's kind of neat. So now looking at watch list species that we look at for the plant watch. So frogbit. As you can see, we've had it in the Great Lakes coastal areas for some time. Actually, that's where it was first discovered in Michigan. It was in Lake St. Clair, Lake Erie, Detroit River system. And not until recently, 2016, we saw it hop all the way from the coastal areas to Grand Rapids and Reeds and Fisk Lake. And then since 2016, we've seen it in Dansville State Game Area, the Pinckney Recreation Area, or Waterloo actually. Then we see it in the Lower Grand River and Pentwater Lake. As you can see, this is quite the mass. So how do you identify frogbit? Frogbit is a free-floating plant. It has roots dangling below, and then the leaves are floating above. And they're called basal, or another word that you may be familiar with is rosette. So all of the leaves and all the roots are coming from one spot. So it's free floating, kind of looks like a little water lily, but very small leaves, 2 to 3 inches. And it has this small white flower with 3 petals. Here's kind of, if you're standing on a boat, what you kind of, to give a contrast, this is hybrid cattail or narrowleaf cattail, which is an exotic and invasive. Here's our native white water lily. And as you can see, these plants can have pretty large leaves, but there are some small ones too. So they can be confused with European frogbit, which you see here pushed against the cattails. So because they're free floating, they move with the wave action, which tends to get shoved up against emergent vegetation. But the one thing that you can do if you're if you're not confident on what you're seeing here, you can, if you grab onto one of these little white water lilies, it'll be rooted to the bottom of the lake. So white water lily roots to the bottom where these are free floating. So I have two pictures here. Is this European frogbit? The clue here is looking at the ruler here and seeing how many inches it is.
No, it is not.
It is not. This is our nice native white water lily that looks like Pac-Man. And then this one, is this European frogbit? I'll just answer. The answer is no. Again, the size of the leaf, the oblong shape, and then also here's the clue. There's our nice yellow flower, kind of a globe flower with spatterdock, or our yellow water lily, nufar. So our final plant, a hydrilla, to talk a little bit about that. this again is a plant hopefully you'll never see, but it's good to be aware of it. It can create these large mats, and there's kind of a cross section of it that we're going to investigate a little further. So there is a common lookalike to this plant called Elodea canadensis. We have it all over the state in many, many different lakes and ponds, also called waterweed. You may be familiar with it from maybe even like back in school when you do photosynthesis experiments. A teacher would purchase it and then you'd see bubbles or oxygen floating out of the water from photosynthesis. But anyways, so how do you tell hydrilla? Hydrilla has whorls of 4 to 8 leaves around the stem. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When you look at the leaves, you can, with your naked eye, you'll be able to see the serrations. You'll see the teeth. And then another dead giveaway is if you looked on the back side of the leaf, so the underside, you would see these little hooks coming out of the midrib of the leaf. So the midrib is, imagine you're looking at an oak leaf and there's that central vein that's in an oak leaf. That's the midrib that they're referring to. And these little hooks would be coming out of the underside of it. This population in Indiana was detected and just to, actually I might even have I do talk about it. Never mind, I'll talk about it here in a moment. But hydrilla is really tough to, can be tough to tell apart from our native Elodea. Elodea does not have obvious teeth on the edge. They don't have the teeth on the midrib on the bottom side of the leaf. And then also they typically have 3 leaves per whorl. However, in some circumstances, they can have less or more than 3. So you have to look at multiple parts along the stem. So hydrilla, just the cautionary tale. So Lake Manitou in Indiana was invaded by hydrilla. It was found all over the place. They did a quick risk assessment and showed within a 75-mile radius, there's over 4,000 lakes. Excuse me for 1 second. So there's over 4,000 lakes. So because hydrilla, it was a major known threat, they closed the boat ramps to lakes. So there's no more public access. And they went through 8 years of treatment that cost almost $2 million. So, and they've now successfully gotten it down, and I think it's now considered eradicated, but I think maybe I'd have to check into that. But all of that effort to keep that plant from leaving that lake, it's important that we don't spread species like this. So is this hydrilla?
Nope.
It's not. Yep, there's those. So here's our whorl, and we have a nice whorl of 3 leaves, and from this fuzzy picture you can't see teeth. And when you look up and down this stem, you're pretty much seeing around 3 leaves per whorl. So not hydrilla. This is our native Elodea or waterweed. And there's, again, for a comparison's sake, here's hydrilla, and obviously seeing those teeth. So there's my second quick lesson on plant identification.
Thank you for going over that. There's a question, can northern milfoil and Eurasian milfoil create a hybrid, and how can you identify that?
Yes, so northern milfoil and Eurasian milfoil do hybridize, and hybridize readily and commonly. And in fact, you can have multiple hybrids within a lake and many hybrids within a region of lakes. So it's complicated, and there's consequences to management. So some hybrids are resistant to certain herbicides. And so you might be applying a specific type of herbicide to your Eurasian milfoil. And at some point you're like, wow, we're putting herbicide on here, but it's not very effective. Well, in that case, you might be seeing a a hybrid milfoil species there. So what's very unfortunate is that you cannot botanically identify this plant. So you can't just pluck it out of the water and say, I am holding a hybrid milfoil. The only way to have 100% confirmation is to have it genetically tested. And there is currently just one lab that has those capabilities, and that lab is out of Montana. He used to be out of Grand Valley State University, and there used to even be a company here in Michigan, but that company is no longer doing this work. But he is still accepting from people in Michigan to identify if they have hybrid milfoil or not. And then he's actively researching, still trying to figure out which hybrids are resistant to what herbicides, so we can help with the management side of things. And if you are curious about who that is, feel free to email me and I can get you that information, his contact information. And I guess I'll add one more thing is he's just finishing up some studies here in Michigan, and some of the lakes, I think he collected some samples within northern western Michigan. So your lake may have already been tested as well.
Well, thank you. Everyone, please keep asking questions, but right now I think let's do the survey, for the raffle for the lake survey. It's the moment everyone's been waiting for. And okay, Chris Gentry with Center Lake is our winner. So Chris, if you're on here, we are going to be contacting you soon about that. Probably will wait till the weather gets a bit nicer, but congratulations.
Yeah, excellent.
There's another question. Could you comment on purple loosestrife?
Yeah, so is there a specific, I'll comment on purple loosestrife first, and then if there's a question, let me know. The purple loosestrife is an emergent wetland invasive species that can be very aggressive. What's been fortunate is that there is a successful biocontrol on this plant. So we don't have successful biocontrols for all invasive species, but there is one for purple loosestrife. There's a beetle that can be released into a population where it's not going to eradicate it. So that's one thing. So these beetles can be released and they control the population. They knock it back a bit. The problem is where, well, so and that's good. I don't want to say it's too big of a problem. The one thing that happens is that there's boom bust cycles. So when there's lots of purple loosestrife and you introduce beetles, the beetles are loving life. They're eating and reproducing and they expand. Well, their population expands so much that it crashes the purple loosestrife, which is good. But then the beetles start to crash because there's not enough food for them. And so then you'll get purple loosestrife returning. And then if there's still a remnant beetle population, they'll come back and knock it down. So you'll get these boom bust years of purple loosestrife due to the population dynamics of the beetle, which is kind of cool. So that's my comment. Was there a question in there, Emma? I can look here real quick.
There's another question about eDNA for invasive plant.
So there's a bunch of research happening on eDNA techniques for aquatic plants. So eDNA is short for environmental DNA, and what that is, where it became famous and well known is that that's what was used to detect big and silver carp in the Chicago Ship and Sanitary Canal entering into Lake Michigan. So it's a technique where you scoop water and you can detect what species are present in there. So it works because many organisms shed something from their body, just like right now with me speaking and brushing my hand, I'm releasing my cells into the environment. And so you would take a scoop of water and analyze it for what species are there. And I think still I'll have to say, I do know this is still being worked on, where they're trying to find effective eDNA techniques for aquatic plants. I think they can do it, but maybe it's not as effective as they would wish. And so that's why it's still being worked on. But I'm not sure. If you want to follow up with me, I can do some quick research to find out. But as of right now, nothing is readily available that I'm aware of.
Well, thank you. We have a few more minutes left if anyone wants to ask some more questions. We also have a quick 3-question poll that we would appreciate if you guys could take. Let us know a little bit more information.
Oh, good. I do see. So Big Sable River getting beetles in June to combat. Nice. So sounds like some groups are trying to combat purple loosestrife with the beetles.
And then I hope everyone got a chance to write down Eric's contact information. Any other last minute questions?
Yeah, thanks everyone. This has been a lot of fun. I would, something I should have put on here, I don't know why I didn't, is that, so in order to do the Exotic Aquatic Plant Watch and the Cooperative Lakes Monitoring Program, you do need to enroll and sign up. We currently our enrollment is not open yet because we've been tinkering and changing completely our registration system. But that's going to be coming online soon in the next few days. And so if you are interested in joining one of those programs to collect that data, go to mycore.net and you'll be able to register.
I'm going to leave the poll up for just another minute. I think we have some people finishing their responses, and then I will close that out too.
Thanks, Danny. Well, thank you so much, Eric, for all this. I found it very helpful. I hope everyone else watching did as well.
And Douglas, I did put up I hope you can see my contact there. And that's I'm going to give you I'm going to give out my cell phone as well for everyone. I'm going to put that in in the chat. So if you want to call me, please use my cell right now as I'm not in my office. So enjoying my basement environment.
Like the rest of us.
Right. Matthew, nice picture of Michigan, or nice image with Michigan with some plants coming out. I like it.
Thanks. That's the cropped version of our organization's logo there. So I can't take credit for it, and I just posted it. But thank you.
All right. Did everyone get a chance to ask all their questions and jot down Eric's contact information? Well, I don't hear anything, so I'll take that as well. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending.
Thanks again for hosting this. Very helpful.
Yes, thank you.
Have a nice day, everyone.
All right.